Welcome back to Beyond the Cards, your favorite monthly podcast with the payments nerds that like to talk about the payments news you want to hear about most. Welcome back, everybody.
Hello,
Hi
everyone.
there.
Welcome back. Hello.
Happy
Friday.
autumn.
Friday, October.
We're almost to the end of the year.
Well, I don't know about that. There's still a lot of time left. Well, we are recording on a Friday. Yeah, so it is an interesting time within the news, but should we get cracking and start talking about some stuff and some things?
Let's do it.
Yes.
All right, so our first story comes by way of TechCrunch, taking a look at the fact that Venmo and PayPal now finally have interoperability between each other. The story is brought to us by Amanda Sibling, and I think what's really I think in our space, there's something that, we encounter this all the time, right? We see lots of mergers, lots of acquisitions with back-end platforms never actually seamlessly integrating. And I feel like this Venmo PayPal piece was just like a glaring example of the fact that, yeah, they can be one company, but that doesn't mean that their platforms are synced to each other. I personally don't use PayPal. Like, the only way I'm using PayPal is via Venmo. And it does always kind of like give you that weird PayPal effect, but I don't know. If I'm in the P2P space, I'm always using Venmo. It's the only transfer app I use.
Interesting. This is the opposite on my side.
Yeah, it's
I
the
don't
opposite. I don't use Venmo quite often.
exactly.
Do you use
I use
PayPal?
both.
I use PayPal, but I only use PayPal, for instance, if I'm doing a service and that is their preferred form of payment. Other than that, I don't really use PayPal. But Venmo, I think the only time I use Venmo if I like for instance, you and I was, we were exchanging that was it. But I think I've been using Venmo one time. But I think it's a good idea, especially for people that don't have Venmo and have the opposite to where they can exchange payments that way. That way you don't have to get so many P2P apps on your phone or users. It's a good way to transfer. So I think this is a good partnership.
Yes, for the final consumer, of course, it's a good thing, but technically, this can be they enter interoperability. But what about the risk associated? Because I don't know Venmo, I never used it, as I mentioned, but I've heard about types of fraud, for instance, existing in Venmo that are not existing for PayPal. So I'm afraid that those can, in a way, increase the risk also in terms of fraud, for instance, um, and all that kind of thing. So not only fraud, but also the privacy and also the user experience. I cannot figure out how it can be changed in a way. Maybe they're going to harmonize that also, because as for me, PayPal is working very well, no matter whether it's for a peer-to-peer transfer or whether it's for paying in a merchant. So not sure about all that.
But wait, and correct me if I'm wrong, if anybody knows this. Doesn't PayPal own Venmo?
Yes.
Yeah.
So why did this
But
Oh.
there was not like
why did
connected.
it take so long? I guess that's
I
one
agree.
that I have. If they own Venmo, why did it take so long? As long as these apps have been out, why did it take so long for them to kind of, I guess, in a sense, integrate to get
Integrate.
to be happening?
I suppose that it's rather for technical reason. I'm not sure about that, but it can be explained by the technical architecture. As long as you have two different architecture, a different technical architecture, two different databases, and the way they are configured, they are built in a way, this can be something awful to kind of have something very harmonized or something like that. You see what I mean? So this interoperability may have been uh, technically difficult, all the more as we have already plenty users of Venmo that are very happy with the services, and that you have at the other side also a PayPal community, because PayPal loves to talk about uh, PayPal community, very happy with PayPal user experiences and so on. So yeah, the question is very interesting to
Yeah.
be
I mean,
noticed.
especially,
Go ahead, Dan.
I mean, here's my perspective, which is like, we look at these big tech companies, especially these big FinTech companies, right? And, they really talk this big game about how they're revolutionizing the industry, introducing stable coins, supporting crypto, all of these like major technical advancements. And so when I look at kind of the tech talent that is at these types of companies, right? That's what makes me scratch my head about being like, why was this that hard, right? Like, you're supposed to be a revolutionary at the forefront of technology. Sure, it may be technically difficult to integrate your two platforms, but I would have to assume that considering your company valuation and what your like raison d'etre is, like, it seems like you should have been able to do that a little bit more effectively. And like, I don't mean to like split hairs here or whatever, but like you look at somebody like, say, the Threads, Instagram, Meta universe, like that Threads Instagram connection was like near seamless. Now, granted, it came with some drawbacks, but like you can easily find somebody on Threads just as you easily find them on Instagram. And that's kind of like what I relate this to is like, well, they were able to do it. Why weren't you able to do it? So I think there was probably some other business reason behind the scenes as why they took as long as they did, because like other tech companies seem to be able to accomplish this with much less friction. Chelsea, go ahead, get your point out, because I have another point I want to bring up about this.
Okay, all I was going to say was I use both of them. I don't feel like I use I don't feel like I use PayPal that much anymore, to be completely honest. I feel like that was an app I started using like in college maybe. Anyways, in terms of the integration and what people are wanting to achieve with like PayPal and Venmo together, is it because you want to transfer funds from like your PayPal over to your Venmo? Is that like what's
No,
the biggest
I was
reason?
about to say, I think it's like for people, like the peer-to-peer payments. If I wanted to send Dan something that I don't have Venmo, I have PayPal. I want to say that's kind of one of the logic behind it, so that way you won't have to at least get both apps.
I see.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
think that's
Yeah.
one of
Because
the.
I tend to use PayPal more for like the business. Where I will see it is like, let's say I'm buying something on my phone and I don't have my card and they don't do, Apple Pay, but they do offer PayPal.
PayPal.
But then I
Mhm.
can't ever remember my PayPal login, to be completely honest. So then I don't buy it. Do you
Same.
guys
I
want
have
to
a
hear
PayPal.
something really funny?
Yeah, of
16
course.
years ago, I bought my wedding dress from a gal in Canada and paid her via PayPal, and I was very scared because it was my
Well,
largest
PayPal has
transaction ever.
Well, I think what PayPal has done and what has made it like, a leader in kind of those larger payments is they have a lot of protections. Like they have the
Mhm.
buyer protections, they have the chargeback
Right.
area. So this is where also I think the lines get blurred a little bit for Venmo, right? Because Venmo is traditionally a P2P platform, right? It's people sending money to each other for various de minimis purposes. Now, does everyone remember that like big looming thing that was like, if you send more than $600 or receive more than $600, you're going to receive like a 1099K for tax purposes?
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Does no one
I
remember
didn't.
that?
Wait, you mean when they said that? Can you say that one more time?
There was like this big kind of fear mongering, especially amongst these like P2P platforms, that the US government was going to
Yes.
force them to start sending users 1099Ks, which are the like tax
Right.
statement,
I remember that.
uh, if you received a certain amount of money.
Yeah, they were gonna put a threshold, right? Like, but it
Yeah.
was gonna be rather low, so people were
Yes.
worried, like,
I
"Oh,
think it
I'm
was
paying my
$600.
babysitter." Yeah, I
Yeah,
heard $600 too.
there was like, and like previously the limit was like 10 or $15,000. And I think part of the reason why, like maybe, and this is again like my theory and giving both companies, some grace as to why this may have took so long, was that the merchant side of the equation was one that I think Venmo was very unprepared for, which were, yeah, people were accepting payments through Venmo or services, etc., where the people were a legitimate like LLC business. And that is a violation of one, the terms and guidelines. And two, yeah, you have to be able to report that. Because if you're a business and people are paying you via P2P, you're basically just attempting to circumvent taxes on those business arrangements. So I do think that they like aggressively set that threshold too low because people were like, well, what if I buy a couch from somebody? Like, that doesn't mean that that person's a business. Like, doesn't mean that I should, like, should I really be taxed on that?
True.
But I did hear somebody once say that, like, oh, if you want to avoid that, you should send money on Zelle instead because Zelle wasn't part of this. And I was like, well, that just sounds like you're giving people money laundering advice at that point.
But now Zelle is you have when you do that, Zelle is like if it's your first time sending something, it'll ask what this payment is for. Is this for a
Yeah.
business? Are you buying a service and stuff like that?
I mean,
PayPal, yeah.
it was a really dumb assertion because if you think banks don't notice that you are getting lots of money for unknown reasons, that you don't get flagged by your bank for review, like it was just such a silly assertion to be like, oh, if you're trying to circumvent, this Venmo thing, just get all of your business income on Zelle instead. And it's like, a bank is gonna figure that out. So it was just like, person, bad advice. Like you just potentially got some people into some like tax situations for attempting to hide their business income. And I do think that that's something that Venmo has struggled with, which is it was never built to be a platform to make business payments. It was built to be a P2P platform, not A to A. So I think, and PayPal has always been a platform that does also support both and supports both very, very well. So I think that could maybe be part of the problem, which is like, how does Venmo then make sure that it can fit into the actual merchant ecosystem. So that way people can pay merchants via Venmo and not have to have it cut over to PayPal. Just my 2 cents.
Oh, that's a good one.
Well, did we beat
But
that
it's
dead horse?
Yeah.
but it's very interesting to see how PayPal also um, what are the changes? I don't know a lot about the US, but I suppose that it's frequent also,
Wow.
even if you do not use it.
You know,
PayPal.
Shira, I know a lot
Uh,
about France.
yeah, but we are used to using PayPal, for example, in France, but the usage of PayPal is far more important, for example, in countries like Germany and so on. And uh, I think that PayPal has regained also power with different innovation. And for example, there are direct competitor also to buy now pay later solutions um, with
PayPal
their
credit.
Mhm.
yeah, and this is far more interesting also for merchants. For example, if the merchants sometimes would rather have a, a PayPal solution uh, uh, and let their user use buy now pay later PayPal rather than payment methods like Alma or Klarna, because Alma and Klarna are far more expensive than PayPal, for
Mm,
instance. So
yeah.
this is something that is very interesting to see what's happening, what's occurring right now with Venmo, to see that there is this um, how can I say that? But this energy or this PayPal's ambition also to connect and to kind of be more and more competitive towards every single payment method. And for example, what I see here is that it's as though they were competing with wallets globally.
Mm.
So in a way, maybe PayPal in a day will kind of also compete and will be a reference in terms of wallet networks and so on. So, I mean, it's very interesting to see that.
Yeah, I was about to say, will they keep this as a peer-to-peer or will they kind of roll this out later on down the line to merchants? The
Well, it
Venmo
kind of already
process.
does. I think there are like Venmo merchants. I did see that they quoted 2 billion users between the two platforms, and I was like, do you have duplicates in there? Because I have both. So like I'm not 2
Yeah, I
users,
have
I'm more
both
like
too. I haven't used my Venmo in years. And I think I got an email saying, "Oh, you still have money in Venmo." I'm like, I do?
yeah, I get that from PayPal that's like, remember you have $5 and I'm
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
cool. All right. So speaking of tech companies and valuations, there's a story here about checkout.com with a share buyback program. And I think the notable thing about this share buyback program is that the valuation once at 40 billion in 2022, which is definitely when we saw, especially like, um, we would refer to checkout.com as a Gen 3 acquirer. Um, a lot of those Gen 3 acquirers were coming up and starting to get really popular. And a lot of them had really high valuations because, there was still this strong pivot into e-commerce. But as of this latest round, their new internal valuation is only $12 billion, um, which I think, probably to the market and investors is showing that the company is actually weaker on earnings than once previously thought.
But can I say something? Can I admit something?
Of
But
course.
I love checkout. I'm going to
Okay,
tell you why
girl.
I love checkout.com. Because even if they are specialized and we also know them for e-commerce, they have a lot of innovations and so on, and they have people inside that innovate also. And it's very they showed this kind of because, for example, in Europe, I'm sorry, I'm going to talk about Europe a little bit and to
Go
know
on a
you with
rant.
that.
Go on it.
But and of course we have competitor a comparative competitor will be Adyen, for instance. But we know that Adyen has this strategy and identify themselves by doing all by themselves. So it's a full service provider, and Adyen lacks flexibility also. The thing is that the market in general is seeking more and more flexibility, and this flexibility would be enabled, for example, through a payment provider like checkout.com. And of course, for e-commerce, they're very competitive also in terms of services and so on. And I like what they do. They're very, very close to their customers. This is something that I love in them. And also, what is very interesting is that maybe one day, the day they will be able to provide, POS, I think that they will be more and more competitive also in the markets. But it's not for today, I think. So that's it. And
Shira
but
loves checkout.
yeah, but no, but it's very interesting each time we talk to them because they
Yeah, they're
are
great. Honestly, they are great.
mm,
I've also, always had very great conversations with them. I do think that they're, generally a really, you know, talented group and also very generally really seeking the best solution for the client. I think really what we see here, especially amongst the Gen 3s, is that just the competition between the Gen 3s is really, really intense. And, checkout was kind of always that alternative to Adyen and Stripe because both Adyen and Stripe are just, they are massive. They're huge. And I think you bring up a really good point, which is the flexibility once a company starts to get that big does actually decrease. They seemingly seem very flexible, but when you're like, okay, I need this particular customization on this feature, you're not going to get it because they're like, well, this feature is platform wide. It can't be customized. And that's generally when people are like, oh, well, I don't like that. So, yeah, I think, and also, I think some of these other Gen 3s are doing a lot of like really flashy things that are really attractive to the market because the market, again, is like super responsive to things like AI, stablecoin. I have not seen as much on those fronts from checkout. Um, but the others, yes. And I feel like that's maybe like continuing to kind of prop those up. I think the other thing that like is really important is like, in my personal opinion, checkout seems more of a direct merchant solution and less a supporter of platforms, whereas many of the Gen 3s are big platform supporters. And what we mean by platforms, you can think of platforms as the same as like marketplaces, etc., right? The coming together of a SaaS solution that supports a lot of sub merchants that sells directly to consumers. So, like, the classic thing is Uber and Uber Eats. That's a platform. And
Yeah,
maybe I'm
that's
wrong.
the reason. Sorry.
No, go ahead.
Yeah, but they can. You have this kind of partnerships also that are possible. So that's the reason why I don't. I'm not afraid. I'm not. I'm not afraid of the evolution of checkout.com with proper partnerships also because they are flexible. So they would be fully able to connect to, for example, solutions that are more platform like, you see. So we, I'm not afraid about their evolution, especially in this context with merchants seeking more and more, and not only merchants, I mean the market seeking for more and more flexibility also and the ability to innovate, not only to sell some kind of products that are ready, but really to customize also a new thing to be able to customize um, s- adaptative and relevant solutions for dedicated merchants.
Yeah, I mean, maybe the cheese stands alone with me. I don't particularly, and this applies to the entire industry as a whole because there's also been a lot of like talk about, hmm, especially recently, like the big drop in Fiserv's stock price, obviously WorldPay, global payments. Like, there's always this like what's going on with their stock price, and I feel like emphasizing the stock valuation really belies the technology that these companies provide, right? Like, okay, yeah, your share price got cut. That still doesn't mean that one, they're not processing like billions, if not trillions of dollars for companies every single day. Like, they're still solid businesses. And that doesn't mean that they aren't really good for some merchants, right? Like, and so I don't like when kind of market analysts and people who watch the market are like, oh, well, investors are souring on them. And it's like, well, unless you're like an ultra savvy investor who really understands what these companies are doing from a pure payments processing perspective, like I just don't really think that it was newsworthy. I've honestly kind of felt like it was kind of rude to them. Uh, and like, I don't really like those kind of conversations around stock price valuations as being a proxy for how good or how bad a company is at doing the thing that they do.
Yeah. I mean, they are also, maybe it is time for them to have a bit of a reset, right? And
Yeah.
the stocks went crazy during the pandemic. And now there's probably some that there's just so much competition that the market needs to, they need to reset. So,
Yeah. I don't think people really like the and I 100% agree with you. I think you're exactly right. There needs to be a reassessment of the core value of these companies, and maybe it was just previously overvalued. Um, and so as those kind of come more into reality, I don't think we should be making a big fuss over that.
Mhm.
Like,
Yeah. Mm.
frankly, everyone got the whole, like, I remember, I think we even wrote about it back in the day of being like, is card present dead? Like, is ecom really truly going to take over? And was this the definitive push we needed to really transition everything into ecom? And like, spoiler alert, because it's now 2025. No,
No,
like, no.
definitely not.
Like, if anything, people want to go back in the stores because they're tired of chatbots.
Exactly. And there are also a lot of limits that have been that have been also detected. For example, well, I'm not going to go here further in detail because it has nothing to do with our topic, but more and more merchants, especially in Europe, are aware, for example, that e-commerce brought a lot of fraud, especially for refund fraud. And this is something that is that goes completely crazy, and they are losing more and more money on it. So it's very difficult to monitor also. And thank God we have right now fraud specialists that have come to the market and that have been more and more implemented for those merchants. But for instance, at the pandemic, you had all your return when you wanted to return something, you didn't have anything to pay. And what we are attending is really merchants and on the retail industry being more and more cautious about that, and even applying a fee for the return so that it does not. So those are the limits of the e-commerce also system that have been completely crazy, and people are so the POS industry will never, card present industry will never die.
Yeah, well, I think that's a good transition into our next topic, which comes by way of payments.com, which is, talking about the big wallets, right? Apple Pay and Google Pay. I mean, I I will admit when I am maybe wrong.
Having
And I definitely was like, I don't get it. Like Apple Pay, Google Pay, like everyone still has their card literally in many times right next to their phone at the same time with like those little like I don't know cases or whatever.
Mhm.
I mean, I don't use a case on my phone, so I wouldn't know, but I see them in the wild. And I was like, okay, well, if you have your card right there and now all the cards support tap to pay, like, why are you really using Apple Pay and Google Pay? And,
It's faster.
yup,
Yeah, I was gonna
turns
say
out
because it's faster.
people for sure, and I think this is really what this article is getting at, is people are really using those mobile wallets. And again, I'll admit I was wrong. I totally use almost exclusively Google Pay now.
I agree. I had it stored on my phone for a while. Like at some setup point, I had added my card. And I think it wasn't until I actually had forgotten my wallet and realized I could use that. And then it just became more and more frequent. And now I will just take my phone in and tap. And it's so handy. And yeah, you're right. You see people all the time with those cards on the back of their phone
On the back of
case.
the cards. I think it's more so like because more people have their phone in their hand, so it's more convenient as well just to hit the little button on the phone and just to go in and just tap to pay. Or even now you have some of these e-commerce. Now they have that as a payment option instead of just entering in
Yes.
your credit card. You can just hit Apple Pay
And I
and
love
do
that.
it that way instead of
I
just
love
taking
that.
it. I definitely love that. I use that all the time, and when I see a website that doesn't have it, I'm like, "Oh my god, what's my card number?" Uh,
Oh, I know. Or if
like,
you
I have
just
to
don't
pull out
have
my
your
card. So I
card.
think that now people are more gravitating to it. And then from a merchant standpoint, I mean, to me, it's savings because we kind of give them to a point of what can you do to implement some of those savings when it comes to e-commerce, and that is, I believe that is one of them by using that Apple Pay information because it just tags all of the information that's already stored. It tags it all the way through the system. You don't unnecessarily have to put all that information in.
Kind of, sort of. I would say that if you're looking at like top line
Mhm.
wallet, you have to have because that the reduction in clicks really makes a difference in terms of people choosing to buy. I think another thing here, right, is people do get confused that Apple Pay and Google Pay are somehow their own networks. They are not. That like these are all still like, because I know I still answer this question for merchants where they're like, well, what is Apple Pay's network fee? And I'm like, Apple Pay's, she's not a network. She's a wallet. So it's still going to be whatever debit or
Their
credit
card.
card someone has
Mhm.
loaded in there. But I do think the actual credential itself is, and this is something the article brings up, it's like, it's becoming less and less. And I've actually noticed in my Google Pay, sometimes when I'm checking out, that if the merchant supports it, I feel so much safer using it because it'll now be a virtual credential. So, like, it's being tokenized as a virtual one-time card. And I'm like, cool, that makes me feel safer purchasing online, which is also why, like, these wallets certainly have a higher percentage of penetration online. But I'm like, yeah, I feel safer purchasing online using that because they scrambled my actual card number into a
Card number.
one-time
Mhm.
credential.
Yeah, because when I notice it, when I do my when I do it, it is not the same, let's say last four as what my card is, but it is simply tied to my card, my
Mhm.
actual physical card. So it does scramble to hold kind of a risk of anything. So I definitely love that too. I remember I went into a store, they was like, "Yeah, you used your last four card," and I was like, That's
That
not it." But then I realized, I was like, "Oh, I get
you
it."
pull it up and it says like mine, when I look at it in the wallet, it says like dash virtual.
Mhm.
And I'm like, ooh, I'll use that everywhere now.
So
I
I
mean, the only
definitely
time
love it,
I
and I definitely think it's something that everybody is, gravitating to now. So there is less swipe and, um, key enter going on now, especially if that
now
option
I
is
will
available.
say there's still fraud elements that
Yes.
can definitely happen, right? If you're and it's kind of funny because it's like, at the same time you're building trust in the usage of these credentials and supporting them online, etc., that doesn't mean that they are fraud free. And in fact, if your credential gets compromised, the fraud that gets enacted against it is almost significantly worse because they can load that credential into an unlimited number of wallets.
Hmm.
Yeah, it happened to me. So I know. I was like, holy crap, how did like 18 transactions all attempt to happen in different locations at the same time?
That is yeah, and you still have to be cautious because there are still fraud factors on there. You can't just be like, "Oh, go loosely with it," because you still have to put your guard up with that because it can happen.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I'm still like, I randomly am still very skeptical of, say, like the shop app. You guys know
Oh,
that.
yeah, every time I do something, it always comes up. I'm like, "How do you know I'm here?"
I know. I've used it once and then uh I'm like 100% convinced that it uses network tokenization because it pinged my phone in a really particular way for like a security check. And I was like, uh, excuse me? And then I was like, oh, that's a network token provision request.
Yeah, it even so, like, I used a website that I didn't even think we shopped. The next thing you know, I get a notification from Shop like, "Oh, you have a delivery." How do you know? I didn't use you. So I am still skeptical of Shop and some of it, like how it knows a lot of things and what information is being passed along to Shop. Um, but I do see those some websites that they do have Shop, even if I don't pick it still shows up in the app to pay that way. Or however, Shop is like that ghost person out in the wild here
Haunting
because
you?
it's Casper. It pops
Not
up every time.
Casper. He's a friendly ghost.
I don't know how friendly Shop is right now. It's all in my business.
Yeah, I mean, definitely, I think something else that I thought was interesting here was like the local wallet. So, like, there's countries that have just these massive and wildly popular local payment methods, especially the instant ones. So, like, Brazil, it's Pix. Netherlands, it's Ideal. Is it Giropay? There's many, many, many of them. And, seeing these customers in those countries actively starting to use those local payment methods and like local wallets, I think is a good sign for listen, if I had an RTP wallet or a pay by ACH wallet, I would be tapping that sucker left and right over a debit card. One, because I know it's cheaper. So I guess the question for me is really will Apple Pay and Google Pay, will they really be the movers and shakers when it comes to pay by bank? And what incentives do they have to support pay by bank functionality within their wallets?
Yeah, I'm curious, and I'm also curious to see if there's going to be any fee increases. If the percentage of those payment methods continue to rise.
I don't think so. I mean, considering their credentials are credit card, debit cards, I think you would just get the fee increases related to debit and credit cards. I don't think it's, though, entirely unheard of. And here's where I will agree with you on that topic. Is, let's say, Apple Pay and Google Pay force network tokenization,
Mhm.
then maybe that does start increasing some merchant cost. But I guess where that line would have to be drawn would be in a network release saying, if you want to accept Google Pay and Apple Pay, you as a merchant must support network tokens.
Okay.
Because right now, it's like not everyone does it.
Sure don't.
Sure do not. And
Hmm.
I think this, again, is like another good segue into our discussion, our last topic, which is Japan's shift to being a cashless society, which, I think is very, very interesting that that shift is taking place, because if there's one thing I feel like everyone knows about Japan is that it's a very old society.
Mhm.
Right? The replacement rate is really low in Japan. So it's an aging population. And so having something like cashless being transmitted across an aging population, and that being a kind of governmental push, seems very interesting to me.
Yeah,
But
a little odd because you would think that
cool.
you'd think a lot of those folks would still probably not want to fully get on board with that. You know what I mean? So to push for it in that area is definitely interesting.
And I mean, that's something they call out, which is there's still a strong
Yeah, that they are
cash
still a
culture.
heavy cash oriented, especially the older population.
That's like now, every culture has their own unique ways of like representing cultural norms in payment, and Japan is definitely like one of those. So you can see from like maybe an older generational perspective, the like actual physical handing of cash from one person to another has like greater cultural significance. I think when you like look at also, there's like a classism aspect of it as well. Like especially here in the US, it's most certainly there's some classism involved with uh unbanked populations and saying like, oh, well, we're a cashless, venue. You are basically saying if you do not have a bank account or some way to get access to some tool for the unbanked, like you can't come in here. I think it's Philadelphia has a law that says that no every place has to still accept cash.
Oh, really? That's interesting.
Yeah, because you're just they do so under discriminatory lines because they say it's discriminatory towards the unbanked.
Yeah, it is. And then like for instance, I kind of forgot that like I forgot that Six Flags was a cashless amusement park. So if you have cash, you have to go to like a kiosk and get a card, put your money in and get your card. And I kind of forgot that they are cashless. And I was like, I haven't seen that in a while where fully I went somewhere and they're cash, they don't accept cash at all.
Yeah, and I mean that's
But how would he?
represents challenges because like what if, at the end of the day you loaded $20 and you've got $1.27 left and you want that
How
dollar
am I gonna get it?
back.
Right, but apparently, they have it to where it is like a Visa card, but it is branded as Six Flags, so you can use it outside of the park, anywhere else, which I think that is a good thing that if you do load your card like that, you can still use it.
Yeah, it's just a
Uh,
reloadable prepaid
yeah, it's
card.
just a reloadable card. I think that is a good thing though, but to kind of take away the option for people that don't want to do that, it it's like you said.
Yeah, it's kind of it's a
Yeah.
bummer. The arena I went to in Seattle, it was completely cashless as well. And I didn't even see a kiosk. I'm like, so what do you do if you like, I don't know, what if you only brought your debit card and all of a sudden it doesn't work?
Yeah. They all
I mean,
represent these challenges. I think the idea of like cashless sounds good and like listen, we have this argument all the time, especially us being on like the electronic payment side, which is, a lot of retailers are still like, I would much rather prefer cash than card because cash is free. And
Mhm.
I'm like, cash is not free. Cash is actually very expensive from a perspective of transaction costs. You have to get change. You have to make sure ain't nobody stealing that cash at the end of the day. And now you actually have a lot of cash on premises that people would want to steal. You have to deposit that cash, which means you have to have an employee take that cash to some place. And so you've got to make sure that those people write up that deposit correctly. Maybe you have to have smart safes to store up cash and get access to that, or potentially you have armored vehicles coming and picking up that cash. Like cash is not free. For anyone who thinks cash is free, you're
There's
probably a very small business, but like it's not free.
And
It's
it's
this, it's,
still risky also with
yeah,
theft, counterfeiting of
shrinkage.
money, etc.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Um, and so like, I think the other thing that this like kind of makes me think of, as a perspective is I think it's
Yeah.
also saying like, it's a sign as well, maybe from like a governmental perspective to say like, Japan is open for business, cater to Japanese customers because they now have better payment methods to purchase things internationally. Because that's a key point to any like cashless push, right? Is the growing e-commerce power and being able to have global networks that can then say like, yeah, like, look, we have a big market of people with these electronic payments who can buy stuff.
Hmm?
Hmm.
Did we lose you?
No, I'm here.
Oh,
How dare you?
I don't know.
I'm always here.
I
Well,
don't
I
know.
mean, that's all I got.
Yeah, it was a session fully of digital wallets and checkout.
Yeah, and
If
those
we
all
loved
those
one thing,
trends. And I
Yeah,
hope
all
that
these choices.
I hope that the merchants will consider more and more of those kind of trends and the potential also. I think that also the provider are already thinking about it, no matter
Yeah, you
whether
can
we are
replace.
talking about the wallets, no matter whether we're talking about um, the cashless also, um, cashless economy, and so on. So I think that there are a lot more to do. We mentioned also that at the end of the day, even if we are going more and more digital, the thing is that physical merchants are very important, remain important. So I think that we still have to work on all those kind of trends, and maybe that the merchants can also start to consider, because, for instance, as you mentioned, Dan, when you have a transaction that have been made, for example, through Apple Pay, at the end of the day, in terms of cost, it's the same cost as the card associated that is stored in the
looking,
wallet. But
looking.
maybe it shall not we maybe there's more work to do, even if it's the same cost. Maybe there is a dedicated monitoring to do also regarding those trends and so on, that the merchant itself can see, and and can adapt consequently, also in terms of
Well,
fraud. So plenty
I think
things to do.
I think in a prior episode, I think we did like an AI discussion where we talked
Mm.
about like some of these services, where like they're like, AI will pick the payment method best for the customer, which will lead to a higher conversion rate. And it's like, that might not be a good thing. That might
Yeah.
mean, I mean, like, if it's a super high cost card that, I know Chelsea. I know she's putting her airline tickets in her hotel, her big tickets on her really good rewards card. I mean, if that's all on the same platform, right? You know, maybe it says, oh, she wants to use that card for this purchase, but it's like a $20 purchase where she would just use her debit card normally. And now it's suggesting the highest cost card. Like, to your point, Tyra, you really got to monitor that stuff, and you got to watch it over time, because, if you see you adopt that service and like your card mix goes from being like 35% rewards to 70% rewards, well, you better hope that the top line is keeping up with that cost. But you're gonna get me going on a whole further
To the
tangent.
rabbit hole.
Yeah. Oh, I was getting revved up on it. But thanks
Yeah, but you do
everybody.
see the growth. You do
I
see the growth
appreciate.
in everything here. So
Yeah, totally. Totally. So I think we can wrap up.
yeah, to be
And if you haven't
continued.
already, please like and subscribe. Share this podcast with a friend. It's free and it actually really helps us out. And we love, checking out our sub count. And if you ever see us at a conference, come up and talk to us about something we've said.
Yeah, and if there's a topic you want us to talk about, just let us know. Leave a comment.
All right. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks,
Bye.
guys.
Friday.
Bye.